Hey there, my name is Anthony Romano, and I'm going to tell you why breakfast is the most important meal of the day to skip. Alrighty, so, is it even a video if I don't start it off with so? So, I've been wanting to make this video for a long time. Basically, this is the series of metabolic reactions that take place after you decide to skip breakfast. So, this could be from an intermittent fast perspective, this could be from the context of prolonged fast, or fasting from a keto metabolism, carb metabolism. Doesn't matter. I'm going to break down the metabolic reactions, the chain reactions that take place once you decide to skip breakfast. So basically what's happening to your body on a moment to moment level. Okay, so this is going to result in increased fat burn, more protection against burning your own muscles, and also better brain function, well-being, that whole sense, okay? But essentially, those are the main benefits. So how do they come about? Well, I will tell you, miscellaneous viewer. Let's go over what actually happens when you do eat breakfast, okay? So for most people, they wake up, get out of bed, and eat something, okay? Now, I'll get into the specifics in a minute, but once you eat anything, you're going to have an insulin rise, okay? Unless it's just pure fat. So no matter what you ate, you're going to have an insulin rise. And this is important because I'm going to repeat this throughout the video. An insulin spike in the morning is the number one dictator of what you're doing metabolically each day. So the number one determiner of what your metabolism is going to do is an insulin spike first thing in the morning. So the way this plays out is, for those of you who, I'll give some more detail here. Insulin is what is released whenever you eat anything, right? Protein raises it a little bit, carbs raise it a lot, and fat raises it little to none, okay? So essentially, whenever you eat anything after breaking a fast, you're going to have a little bit of a blood glucose rise, and even if it doesn't contain any carb, right? Any glucose. So essentially, when I'm getting over to an insulin spike dictates the metabolic status of your day, what that means is no matter what you ate, it's telling your body, hey, let's build something, okay? Doesn't know what it wants to build, but it wants to build something. What it wants to build will be determined by, if you have muscle tissue to repair, how sensitive you are to insulin, which can be based on, if you eat a shitload of junk food, etc. Those things will determine what your insulin's actually going to do, but we know that your insulin is going to actually go towards building something, okay? It's going to go towards either repairing tissue or storing it for the most part. So if you have that in the morning and you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to lose fat and you have an insulin spike in the morning, you're shooting yourself in the foot right in the beginning of the day because you're telling your body, hey, today we're going to try to build stuff, okay? Evolutionarily, people wouldn't have food available as frequently as we do today. Thousands and thousands of years ago, if you had food in the morning, it's because you were trying to make sure you survive tomorrow. You're trying to stockpile. You're trying to save it away because you're starting to eat as soon as the day goes on. Okay? Now, of course, societies weren't incompetent. They would be able to have food stockpiled so that they could eat breakfast. But for the most part, they just never really would need it. They would eat it as a luxury. Okay? And if it was the summertime where fruits were more available, carbs were more available, people would have these things. But essentially, for the most part, people would be able to fast for purposes of managing their resources, etc. So an insulin spike in the morning is key here because that's the first domino that's going to knock over everything else I'm going to explain here. Because if you have insulin going off in the morning, it's telling your body we're trying to build. If you don't eat anything, you're telling your body, hey, we're just going to use what we got. Okay? So more on that in a moment. When you do eat breakfast, you are going to be, in some way, reacting to a rise in ghrelin, which is the hormone, or ghrelin, as some, pretentious people call it. Ghrelin which basically will make you hungrier, and that's the hormone that rises when you're hungry. Leptin is kind of like the master controller of those hormones, but it's more so rising as a signal to start using fuel or to eat more, okay? So essentially, you're going to react to those hormones in general, right? In addition to blood sugar, blood insulin from the night before. But you're going to react to how hungry you are in the morning and eat something which will presumably get you a blood sugar spike and a blood insulin spike. Okay? Now, also in the morning, your cortisol is up. Typically, if you're somebody with healthy adrenal function, your cortisol is going to go up. And essentially, this is what gets you out of bed. This is what gets you locked and loaded because it's the stress hormone. Now, you have to realize that not all cortisol is bad. And what cortisol actually does is it breaks things down so that they're able to be used, okay? So cortisol is only a problem if it's attacking certain tissues. Now, if you're waking up and you're eating breakfast, you will get that blood sugar rise, that blood insulin rise, which isn't necessarily a problem. But here's the key. You may have heard me say in my carb backloading video that cortisol will only break down muscle tissue when in the presence of insulin. So of an insulin spike. So essentially, if your insulin isn't high, right, at the same time you have this cortisol spike, you're just going to be tapping into fat and not muscle tissue at all. And that's exactly what will happen if you skip breakfast, right? Because skipping breakfast is not allowing you to eat anything, and therefore not allowing you to get that insulin spike, and that because of the blood sugar spike that will result. And even if you're somebody on a keto metabolism, eating anything is going to slightly raise blood glucose, especially after a fast of some point, right? Because break fast is breaking your fast over the night, even if it was only, 8 hours, okay, of a fast. Even if you ate and then passed out immediately, okay? So essentially, you are not going to have elevated insulin in the morning if you're from a keto metabolism or any metabolism, but even if you're on a keto metabolism and then you wake up and have breakfast, your insulin's going to go higher, and some of that protein might convert into glucose. But either way, no matter what your background is, if you just don't eat breakfast, you're keeping that insulin stable and low. And your body's still able to maintain blood sugar even if you're on a carb metabolism during an intermittent fast. So essentially, you're not getting that insulin spike, which is now making the cortisol rise catabolic only to the tissues you want it to be catabolic to. Fat tissues, okay? Now, of course, you can still be mobilizing glucose in the bloodstream, other things like that. It's not like it's necessarily just going to dive into your muscle tissues if you have an insulin spike at the same time you have cortisol raise, but they are correlated here, okay? If you don't have that insulin spike at the same time you have a cortisol rise, your muscle tissue is far more protected, which is also, going hand in hand with the ketogenic metabolism, because ketosis really only occurs when insulin is very low. So, or at least lower beyond a certain threshold. So in general, that also plays into how ketosis can be protective of muscle, but even for people who aren't, eating ketogenically, you are going to be tapping into more fat tissue on your body if you simply skip that breakfast. Which also ties into some of the practical takeaway here, which is do fasted cardio. If you're somebody who already does cardio or trying to get more aggressive with fat loss, do it during this low insulin state, because especially in the morning, because that's when your cortisol is going to be higher, and that's when you'll tap into fat stores. People often say, or at least a myth I've heard from most of the fitness gurus on YouTube, is, do your cardio in the morning before breakfast, because you'll tap right into fat stores. But yet they can't give an answer as to why. The answer as to why is your cortisol is still elevated from it being in the morning, right? Waking you up if you're a healthy individual, somebody without, dysregulated sleep patterns, in which case your cortisol might be all over the place. But the reason why is your cortisol's up, your insulin's low. And even if you're not on a keto metabolism, you're still going to tap into fat stores. And what's going to happen is when your insulin is low, your glucagon is going to go up. Glucagon is a hormone which mobilizes fuel from basically storage, okay? So your liver is going to start releasing glucose into the bloodstream from liver glycogen if you are somebody who's on a carb metabolism. If you're somebody who's on a keto metabolism, it's going to start mobilizing fatty acids, okay? And here's some other benefits as far as lifestyle and physique, okay? Your growth hormone will go up during an intermittent fast. Now, you're probably thinking, how is my growth hormone going to go up when I'm not eating anything? Well, this is a stress response. Technically, this is a hormetic response almost, if you want to think of it that way, because a lot of things seem counterintuitive, but when you don't have something, it puts more demand on your body to produce whatever that something is, right? That's a general rule, but if you don't have food coming in, it puts more demand on your body to mobilize its own fuel. And that's one of the roles that growth hormone plays. It essentially mobilizes, well, it helps to move glucose and fuel around your bloodstream. And it's highly associated with longevity, with clear skin, aesthetically pleasing finish to your skin. That's literally the cosmetic benefit of growth hormone. That's why a lot of women are interested in growth hormone as well for cosmetic purposes, but a lot of men tend to gravitate towards learning about it because they think it's going to get them yoked. In reality, growth hormone can have those anabolic benefits. IGF-1, one of the carriers of growth hormone in one way, is more anabolic in that way. But essentially, growth hormone isn't the primary thing for people who are trying to get the most, like people doing steroids and whatnot will get far more benefit out of using actual steroids than growth hormone. But growth hormone does have plenty of those benefits for keeping you young. That is essentially what growth hormone can do. So it's kind of a misleading name because it makes you think about growing, but it's almost more about youthfulness, okay? So that's a lot of the benefits associated with growth hormone that will be increased from skipping breakfast, okay? So an insulin spike in the morning is going to dictate the entire metabolic status of your day, no matter where that insulin spike comes from, okay? You can get it from a whey protein shake, right? You can get it from a bowl of Cheerios, but most of the foods we eat for breakfast nowadays will cause a rapid and elongated insulin spike, okay? So you can get 90% ahead of most of the people out there if you just skip breakfast, okay? Even if you don't want to do my funky keto stuff, okay? All the fasting and crazy, wacky stuff that's out there, prolonged fasting, intermittent fasting can be the tool for you that is the easiest to implement, okay? Now, for people who are already on a ketogenic metabolism, it will amplify ketosis. But it also, as far as fat burning comes, that's inherently beneficial. But when we're talking about anybody here, no matter what their metabolic state is, intermittent fasting is going to sensitize you to the fat-burning properties of epinephrine. So essentially, this is also something I've mentioned in my carb backloading video, because it's mentioned in the book Carb Backloading by John Kiefer about how essentially when you're training in a low insulin state, your body is going to feel more of that demand to produce more of its own fuel. So essentially, when you have, epinephrine, adrenaline flowing through your veins, it's a signal, right? Partially as a neurotransmitter, but also as a metabolic signaler to start mobilizing fuel more, okay? Essentially, it sensitizes you to the fat-burning effects of adrenaline, okay? So if you are somebody who's going to work out intensely right now, you're even more tapped into burning fat and protecting muscle, okay? So even further benefits as far as a weight loss perspective goes. And, body composition, maintaining your muscle, because many people are worried about fasting and losing muscle. Okay, so as I was editing the video, it's nighttime now, but a key point came to my mind. And essentially that point is, when we're talking about a muscle building perspective and intermittent fasting, skipping breakfast, that type of a thing, even though the hormonal changes I've talked about in this video are primarily focused at, fat burn and physique maintenance and polishing up, there are still many of conducive combinations of muscle building, bulking, and intermittent fasting you can use. Just because I'm focusing on, cortisol breaking down fat tissue, that type of a thing, and minimizing insulin in the morning, doesn't necessarily mean, eat a shitload of meals and that will jack up your insulin, because things aren't always linear. Sometimes, abstaining from insulin will increase your sensitivity to it, which can result in net greater muscle gain. So there are other ways to, play around with these mechanisms, but that's a video in and of itself, which I will make, but it's not right now. And essentially, when we're talking about building muscle, none of what I've explained in this video is going to negate muscle building. So if you're somebody who's trying to build muscle, don't worry about, intermittent fasting because it will help you burn fat. That is not mutually exclusive from muscle building. It's simply something that will be a useful benefit, okay? So don't worry about that, and don't think that there is a linear relationship between the amount of meals you eat and muscle building. Simply the takeaway here is, if you eat first thing in the morning, even though you can build muscle from that, because the insulin spike will indicate that you're building, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go to muscle tissue. Okay? Of course it can, but for people who are less insulin sensitive, more insulin resistant, those types of things, they're obviously less likely to put that insulin in a more aesthetically pleasing place. So the point that you want to take home here is, don't be worried about intermittent fasting if you're trying to build muscle. In fact, there are many purposes to use the two in a productive manner, okay? But for now, this video is primarily focused at physique, tweaking, fat loss, and overall health and well-being by increasing that growth hormone, that youthfulness, okay? Also, I got my little projector set up here. This is pretty funny actually. I've actually never mentioned this because I just don't really watch too much TV or shows. But I got Peaky Blinders up here. This is just like a, little projector thing I got here. And I got my projector. This is just a projector I got from Amazon. And I actually made that little, this is how much of a nerd I am, yo. I made that little stand to go over my bed frame and project onto this shower curtain shows, so I can watch shows. I mean, not that I watch too much TV anyways. I probably only use that like once a month, but when I do, it's from a projector in my bed so I can fall asleep while watching shows. So I thought it was pretty cool. So if you're looking for cool ideas to do shit like this and watch my videos while you're relaxing in your room, grab a projector, somehow craft a platform for it using the box that it comes in, put it over your bed frame, and then also go on Amazon and buy a little shower curtain and some command hooks, which you can then hang to create, a wall for this to go up to. But, my boys are telling me to watch Peaky Blinders, so watching that. Anyways, I thought that was pretty cool. But I hope you enjoyed this video, okay? I'm going to roll the outro to this, but I forgot to add in that you got to go to my website, romanoketo.com, and I also would like you to watch my other videos, okay? Particularly stuff about fasting, if you've enjoyed this video. But I offer one-on-one coaching. I'm offering group coaching soon. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, it's up. And I'm also going to be putting up programs. There's plenty of other content that's going to be on my website by the time you are watching this video. So thank you for watching. Enjoy my extra outro that's going to roll. And thank you again for watching. Okay, so that was it for the video on skipping breakfast. Okay, hopefully you've been introduced to this idea and the other benefits it brings. Of course, there are other benefits that people talk about commonly, autophagy, cellular cleansing, same thing. Those are the benefits. But I wanted to talk about what actually happens on a hormonal chain reaction level. And hopefully I've given you that and delivered on it. So let me know, like and subscribe if I delivered on this, okay? Or if you just like me and you want to show the love, okay? That's it for this one. Thank you for watching. Anthony Romano. Peace.